On the 25th anniversary of the event in 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Visit the moon of Mars.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
You want me to knock you in the head?
Well, I want you to swear to
Get
God
away
on the
from
Bible
me.
that you walked on the moon.
Okay.
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Seibel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator in NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
and get the hell out of the Black House.
Well,
Take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
When the shadow's in the wrong place, I don't give a damn about all that shit.
of lunar orbit being falsified.
Being falsified?
Correct. We got an unedited tape from a source at the Johnson Space Center.
Yes. Totally nonsense.
Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
And as part of that mission, 50 moon rocks were brought back to Earth and handed to all 50 states. But over the last 5 decades, 2 of them have gone missing, including the one meant for New York.
Yes. Joe Guntheit, a former NASA special agent and now known as the Moon Rock Hunter, tells me he's on a mission of his own.
As we go on, the remaining moon rocks are proving to be tougher.
Joe and others have tracked down 48 of the state rocks still oddly missing, those given to Delaware and New York.
The last person I know that had possession of the New York Apollo 11 moon rock was Nelson Rockefeller. Since Rockefeller had it, We don't know where it is.
He and others have looked, even questioned state officials.
I'm going to knock on the doors of a few Rockefellers and see if they know where it's at.
In the meantime, Joe tells me his hope is to have all the moon rocks put back on public display so that younger generations can learn from this historical event.
Well, there's definitely been conspiracies that have been put together and executed. And these conspiracies have greatly affected the American people. The Gulf of Tonkin's a perfect example. Another one that they were planning on was Operation Northwoods.
Yes.
Operation Northwoods was one that they were planning on blowing up a drone jetliner, blaming it on the Cubans. They were going to arm Cuban friendlies and have them attack Guantanamo Bay. They were going to sacrifice American troops and American lives. And they were going to do this in order to get people to be excited about a war with Cuba. This is a real thing that was signed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was released by the Freedom of Information Act, and it was vetoed by Kennedy. So we know that there were people, at least in 1962, that were planning on shit like this.
Yeah.
So that's a real thing. And the idea that that just went away and no one does that anymore.
It's crazy.
I don't believe that. I think there's most certainly evil people in all fucking sectors of life.
Yes.
The moon landing one's my favorite.
Really?
I got balls deep in that for years. I was completely
So you
convinced.
think they did not go to the moon?
No, I don't think that anymore.
Okay.
But you know what I think now? I think I don't know. But that was the only time in history that a human being has been more than 400 miles above the Earth's surface. All the space station missions, all the space shuttle missions, all that stuff is
within orbit.
Yeah, it's low. But they had never even flown a chicken out there and see if it comes back alive. Like, we really didn't.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I'm not into the space travel one. So
I mean, they did a couple of flybys, like that went around the moon, early before they landed on the moon.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, without unmanned drones like what we have on Mars and things like that, we've never really sent a living thing out through the magnetosphere, through the Van Allen radiation belts, into deep space. There's all these possibilities of solar flares and anything that would have killed them instantly. And they just did that. And then we haven't been able to do that since 1972.
That's the one way. I've never looked into the moon landing. I think it's kind of goofy, right?
Well, it's weird. It's a weird one.
Why have we never gone back? It's been 50. Surely our technology is far superior to what it was in 1969.
The technology is far superior, except that they're not using that technology for manned space travel into deep space like that. In many ways, it's money. Right? There's how much money is there in going to the moon, and it's also very risky to send humans out there. I mean, we're talking about manned missions to Mars now, which may or may not take place by 2030. They're talking about doing that, but it's way cheaper and safer to send robots out there. Like, why risk human lives? The rovers on Mars are that's the most interesting because they're sending these really high resolution photos of the surface of Mars, and they're running tests and checking for biological life. It's really, really interesting stuff. The technology back then was nothing compared to what they have now in terms of calculations and computers and it's also there's unquestionably some stuff that whether it was images or video that was faked. And I think...
Really?
Yeah.
So like I said, I never looked into this at all.
Gemini 15 is the big one because there's a photo of Michael Collins. It shows him in deep space, and they use it as a press release saying that he was on a spacewalk when it was really an image of him from a test run where there was all this stuff in the background, and he was on this harness, and they just blacked out the background and tried to sell it as him being in space.
I was looking up how much it costs to send somebody to space.
Oh, it's insane.
$70 million.
There's these...
70 million?
For a NASA astronaut to fly on a Russian shuttle.
Well, there's all these
Bezos.
private guys trying to sell tickets to places. I mean, Bezos is trying to do it. Musk, obviously.
But that's space. That's just low Earth orbit. But they are talking about future visits to the moon and to Mars. But a lot of times I feel like when they say that, George Bush Sr. said that they were going to go to the moon, back to the moon again. In like fucking, when was that? 1990 or whatever the hell that was?
Our third goal is to return to the moon by 2020.
People have always said we're going to go back to the moon, but we haven't been back since 1972. Does that mean that we never went? No. But then it gets weird when you find out that Wernher von Braun was a fucking Nazi.
Kathy, you were telling me that this is one of your favorite artifacts in the museum, but it looks kind of like a plain model rocket. Why is this so special?
Marty, don't let looks fool you. This model rocket was actually handcrafted by Dr. Wernher von Braun. As you well know, he was one of America's premier rocket scientists. But it wasn't until after World War II, when he came over with the paperclip scientists, that he began working with our scientists developing America's space program.
That had a very strong connection to this area too, correct?
Absolutely, because after World War II, when the paperclip scientists came over to America,
they were brought in through the East Coast. They actually stuck Von Braun on a train by himself. And his cover was that he was a businessman from Geneva, and he wound up sitting next to an American who did business in Geneva and almost blew his cover. They were all illegal aliens at that time, so they took them across the border and then brought them back in. And that was when the Army really puckered, because they decided to walk away. Couldn't have stopped them.
The Marshall Space Flight Center has achieved an enviable record today in successfully meeting the problems which have confronted us in our bid to place a man on the moon in this decade. This record has been the result of teamwork and our willingness to be satisfied with nothing less than a job well done.
Wernher von Braun, the guy he was the head of NASA. He was the guy who organized the moon landings, and he was the head rocket guy. That guy was a legit Nazi. Like, he was wanted by the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that if he was alive today, they would prosecute him for crimes against humanity. They would hang the 5 slowest workers every day in front of his Berlin rocket factory. Oh, yeah. What they did was they took this thing, it was called Operation Paperclip.
Who are the paperclip scientists? Why is that a term I should know?
Well, there were many scientists that were working with Germany at the end of World War II, developing things like the V2. And when the war was over, Russians and Americans basically divvy up the scientists. So the scientists that America wanted to bring, they put a paperclip on their folder, and that marked them. From then on out, it was called Operation Paperclip, and they were the paperclip scientists.
When we won World War II, they took all the top Nazi scientists and they secretly brought them over to America. And they did it on the down low so that no one would think like, hey, why do we have a guy named Wernher von Braun running the American space program? Well, it's because the Nazi scientists were insanely advanced. So the question is like, well, were they really Nazis, or were they scientists that were under the boot of the Nazi administration? I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not around then.
Yeah.
But I do know that these are the people that were the head engineers and the people that designed it. Wernher von Braun himself was saying how impossible it was, just years before they did the moon landing and years before Operation Paperclip, that it was impossible to go to the moon, or how ridiculously impossible it would be. But technology advanced from then to when 1969 happened to when they did it. I stopped saying that we never went to the moon because I really don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. You have to really know, how much do I know about rocketry? How much do I know about aerospace? Zero.
Yeah.
So if I'm running around saying I don't believe people went to the moon, what is it based on? It's based mostly on ignorance, speculation, and the excited feeling that comes with trying to uncover a conspiracy.
You have to come to the realization that you're probably never going to know the real answer with a lot of these things. Very likely. I mean, some of them come out many, 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 many years later. We're talking about like Gulf of Tonkin, right? Or Operation Northwoods. Many years later, it comes out. But, there's a good likelihood that I'll never know the truth on stuff I read a lot about.
I think with the moon landing, it's way more likely that we went to the moon, but that some of the footage is fake. And I think they probably did that because it's incredibly difficult to film things on the moon. And I think they filmed some stuff in test runs and then tried to pass that stuff off.
Should have brought their iPhone.
They didn't have it back then. They had these cameras that they had in the center of their chest. Well, that's what they said. Well, it was that they did it remotely. That's how they captured the video of the lunar module leaving the surface of the moon and panned up and watched it go. That they did all that remotely. It's all... There's some squirrely footage. You ever see the video of them jumping around? It looks like they're on trampolines.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Like they're just bouncing straight up in the air. You're like, well, what the fuck is that? How come the physics are different in different flights? Like in some of the flights, like Apollo 11, they're barely getting off the ground.
Isn't it one where they're walking, but they're kind of going like that?
Well, there's ones like that, and then there's also ones where they fall down. It looks like they're getting yanked up by wires.
Maybe landing.
Don't eat next to you're gonna be dead.
Uh-oh. Boy, do I like to run up here. I feel like Bugs Bunny. That's neat. And here come the Boxy twins. You're pretty agile there, Twinkle Toes. John? Yes, sir. You are black from the knees down. No way to avoid it. I was strolling on the moon one day when, much to my surprise, a pair of bunny eyes. I like to skip along, but me, boy, skip. Or whatever you call it. I can't get my left leg in front of me. Dum-da-dum-dum-dum. Dum-dum-dum-dum.
I think it's entirely possible that some of that stuff was faked.
Huh.
But I don't. I think it's way more likely that they actually went to the moon than they didn't. But it's way sexier to think that they faked the whole thing. It's fun. It's fun to think they faked the whole thing. That everybody was quiet about it, and Neil Armstrong gave this real cryptic speech on the 25th anniversary of the moon mission, saying that there are hidden truths. What is the exact quote that he said? It was real cryptic. It was like, what do you? Let's see if you can find it. No. Just play the whole thing so you don't confuse everybody.
In 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
What the fuck does that mean? I mean, what? You're supposed to say, "Yo, I went to the moon, bitch." You're not supposed to say breakthroughs. That
maybe he's giving it away.
Truth protective layers. Like, I don't even understand what that means. The press conference is one of the more fascinating things. If you watch the press conference, again, I was balls deep in this stuff for years. The press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969. It's weird, man. It's weird. They're like fidgety and looking nervous, like they're getting away with something.
So they didn't do it then?
They might have done it. They might have been forced to say some things that they didn't want to say, and that could be part of it.
Absolutely.
They could have done it. But there's a lot of weirdness with the moon landing. It's if you wanted to have like a conspiracy to wrap your head around that's exciting, it's one of the best ones.
Really, but who benefits from it?
The United States government did, because it showed military superiority over the Russians, so we were able to do that.
Sure.
It also, it was the Nixon administration. People were just flat out full of shit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they were just lying to people left and right back then.
That's government, though.
Yeah, but even more so then, because it was unchecked. There was no media.
Social media.
Yeah, there's nothing that would expose them for this. And this stuff, they would air it on TV once in 1969. You would never see it again unless you watched it on film. There was no YouTube where you could go back and watch the astronauts on trampolines video. That's my favorite one. You watch that and you go, what in the fuck is happening there? These guys are bouncing up in the air. Like, how are they doing that? Like, they never did. If you watch Apollo 11 when they were moving around on the surface of the moon, it's just like they're moving in slow motion. And then you go to whatever it was, like Apollo 14 or 15 when they were doing the trampoline thing. They're fucking flying through the air. And like their feet are hidden. Look at this. Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and It's very weird. But it could have been that they were really on the moon and these guys were fucking cowboys and yahoos and they wanted to bounce around.
Oh, you were posting those videos.
Yeah, I posted
back
those
in the day.
videos back in the day. Yeah, I had a debate on Penn Jillette's radio show with a guy who's an astronomer. And he wasn't willing to admit a lot of stuff that was a fact, like the fact that Werner von Braun was a Nazi.
Well, why does the flag look so still there?
Well, the flag had a wire, first of all, on the top of it that stiffened it up to make it. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird too. And they try to make some logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like the wires one is weird. If you watch them fall down, like go to that one right there, Jamie. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's not him standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
That's not him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon. Okay, so you realize you're in 1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly.
Right? You can't get up without.
Exactly.
Now we go back to MMA because that's what these freaking. You can't look at. There's nothing on the ground. How's he going to get the momentum?
He's getting yanked up. Like he would have super abs. He would have to be like a breakdancer.
No, you can't because. Okay, maybe a breakdancer. Maybe a breakdancer. But you can't get up without putting a base down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really weird.
It's
I never saw
weird.
it.
It's entirely possible that some of the footage was bullshit. But it doesn't mean that they didn't go to the moon.
Yeah.
It means that overzealous people in
And he only had one
press...
foot on the ground there, too.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Look at this. Watch.
So he stood up like...
Look at that. It's ridiculous.
He can't do it.
What? His right foot's down, his left foot's up, and he just goes straight up in the air. It is crazy.
That's fake.
But I've never been in 1/6 Earth's gravity in either of you.
No,
so maybe it's
Joe,
easier
it's
to
fake,
do.
Dude. Can't stand up like that.
You think that's fake?
That
Ben
video
Askren says we never went to the moon.
I said that video is fake.
No, the video is real. That's from television.
Okay, that guy standing up like that, he got help somehow.
Yeah, well,
you can't stand up like that.
Very well, he could have been on wires. It could have been that they were using that to simulate what it would be like. Because they definitely filmed a lot of simulations. They did a lot of that because they wanted to prepare the astronauts. It's entirely possible that some of those simulations got passed off as being an actual video of them on the moon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Or they faked the whole fucking thing. I wasn't there.
50 years ago, the world witnessed an unprecedented milestone, an impossible achievement, the manifestation of human curiosity, technology, and sheer force of will. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the surface of the moon in an event broadcast live to over 500 million people. The 7-pound Westinghouse SSTV space camera was a technological feat. The space camera couldn't broadcast in the right resolution or frame rate for television. Engineers at NASA tracking stations took the lunar signal, displayed it on a 10-inch video monitor, and used TV cameras to literally film the monitor. This recording, with different contrast, brightness, and resolution, was broadcast worldwide. However, the original, raw, high-resolution stream was also recorded onto 1-inch telemetry tapes as a backup. Those historically valuable tapes were stored away until the early 1980s, which is when NASA completely lost track of them. That's right, NASA lost the original recordings of the Apollo 11 moon landing. The original tapes were most likely reused or overwritten with low-resolution satellite imagery for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, because they were running out of tapes. In 2006, NASA announced they were going to try to track down any original high-resolution copies. The search team was headed by Richard Naftzger, a former NASA engineer who oversaw the original Apollo 11 broadcast. Thousands of boxes were destroyed by a sprinkler system. 140,000 tapes from the Apollo era were checked out and never returned. Some of the places that they were sent had their contents destroyed, erased, or simply degraded through bad storage.
The records clearly showed that there's an inescapable conclusion that this team has reached, and that is that these 45 tapes were included in the several 100,000 that were pulled out, recertified, degaussed, and put back into the network. The slow scan recordings are no longer.
Everything that was happening aboard the Apollo 11 flight was constantly streaming down to antenna sites all over the world. From the astronauts' heartbeats to electrical use inside the command module, it was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
doesn't have it either. The Smithsonian doesn't have it. Johnson doesn't have it.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
Geraldo, this isn't just one tape. This is reams of tape labeled Apollo 11 moon landing. Someone had to physically go and erase it.
So what happened, these were NASA tapes, and it got lost. Stuff happens.
Okay.
I said, man, you guys, you lied about a lot, didn't you? And instantly he said, no, we didn't lie about certain things. We lied about everything. None of it was true.
50 years ago, the world witnessed an unprecedented milestone, an impossible achievement, the manifestation of human curiosity, technology, and sheer force of will. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the surface of the moon in an event broadcast live to over 500 million people. The 7-pound Westinghouse SSTV space camera was a technological feat. The space camera couldn't broadcast in the right resolution or frame rate for television. Engineers at NASA tracking stations took the lunar signal, displayed it on a 10-inch video monitor, and used TV cameras to literally film the monitor. This recording, with different contrast, brightness, and resolution, was broadcast worldwide. However, the original, raw, high-resolution stream was also recorded onto 1-inch telemetry tapes as a backup. Those historically valuable tapes were stored away until the early 1980s, which is when NASA completely lost track of them. That's right, NASA lost the original recordings of the Apollo 11 moon landing. The original tapes were most likely reused or overwritten with low-resolution satellite imagery for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, because they were running out of tapes. In 2006, NASA announced they were going to try to track down any original high-resolution copies. The search team was headed by Richard Naftzger, a former NASA engineer who oversaw the original Apollo 11 broadcast. Thousands of boxes were destroyed by a sprinkler system. 140,000 tapes from the Apollo era were checked out and never returned. Some of the places that they were sent had their contents destroyed, erased, or simply degraded through bad storage.
The records clearly showed that there's an inescapable conclusion that this team has reached, and that is that these 45 tapes were included in the several hundred thousand that were pulled out, recertified, degaussed, and put back into the network. The slow scan recordings are no longer.
It is clear from these rarely seen color television pictures that the crew of Apollo 11 had a high-resolution color video camera with them on their mission. Yet the only pictures broadcast live from the moon's surface were these from a low-definition black and white camera. In fact, the networks complained because in addition to this, they were forced to shoot the images, second generation, off of a projection TV of the technology of 30 years ago, and were not even allowed to take a direct feed, which further degraded the quality and clarity of the images. Perhaps this was precisely what NASA and the federal government had in mind. After all, it was a first, regardless of where they were. Better to open up their debut mission with fuzzy pictures and numerous blackouts, rather than show too much revealing detail of a false scene that was yet unproven. And finally, the element that seals their fate. The footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period. One gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary, an old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity of the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond.
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger. We're coming in on Earth.
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we're so much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from any other windows. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. Dated July 18, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out. We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator.
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out, and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up to see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it?
86-year-old American astronaut Buzz Aldrin is reported to have passed a lie detector test over his claim that he sighted an unidentified flying object or UFO during the 1969 moon mission. Aldrin was the second man after Neil Armstrong to set foot on the moon. Last week, Aldrin answered questions from his fans about his alleged encounter with alien life in space. Reports said that 3 other astronauts, Al Worden, Edgar Mitchell, and Gordon Cooper, all took part in the test conducted in the United States.
Recently, a British tabloid published an exclusive viral story that claimed NASA astronauts, including Buzz Aldrin, passed lie detector tests when asked about alien encounters. Unsurprisingly, those claims about him actually seeing aliens are likely false. The article says 4 NASA astronauts gave researchers vocal statements about potential alien encounters, and then those statements went through complex computer analyses to test their authenticity. But there's no published research on the team's methodology or how the analyses detect lies. Those researchers haven't shared that information with the public. Aldrin's press team released a statement after the story went viral, saying, "This is bogus, and we don't know where it came from." 2 of the other astronauts who participated in the study have been dead for years. And Aldrin has made several TV appearances in recent years to deny he'd seen alien life in space.
Security is going to be a very big factor with respect to space and space exploration. At some point in the future, we're going to look back and say, how did we do it without space? The Vice President will serve the future of American space leadership. We're going to lead again. It's been a long time. It's over 25 years. Today, we're taking a crucial step to secure America's future in space by reviving the National Space Council after it has been dormant almost 25 years, if you can believe it. Today's announcement sends a clear signal to the world that we are restoring America's proud legacy of leadership in space.
Noises reportedly were heard in May 1969 by the Apollo 10 astronauts as they circled the moon, a month before the first astronauts stepped foot on the lunar surface on July the 21st that same year. The sounds, which lasted about an hour, were recorded and transmitted to Mission Control in Houston.
That is music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that whistling sound?
According to the Discovery show, the trio felt the sounds were so strange that they debated whether or not to tell the chiefs at NASA, for fear they wouldn't be taken seriously and could be dropped from future space missions. NASA says the sounds could not have been alien music. An engineer from the U.S. Space Agency said the noises likely came from interference caused by radios that were close to each other in a lunar module and command module. Astronaut Al Worden, who flew on Apollo 15, disputed that explanation, saying, quote, "Logic tells me that if there is something recorded on there, then there is something there."
We have Martin Kenny, and on the opposing side, scientist, cosmologist Sarah Bosman. Martin, we have to go to you first of all. Why do you think it didn't happen?
Well, there's overwhelming proof that it didn't happen. There's people researching this topic a lot more. We're in the age of technology now. I think in the past, like you're saying, we had no way of verifying anything we were told. So we saw the moon landings, well, you saw the moon landings, and you believed it, but there was no way for you to check any of it. And now we're in the age of technology. As you said, a lot of the young people believe that it was faked, and that's because they are now investigating for themselves.
I find it very interesting, and we'll talk to Sarah in a minute about the scientific side that she believes. But for me personally, I just think far too many people would have to
cover it up.
Cover up for far too many years.
Well, how many people
to never have slipped up?
How many people have supposedly gone beyond low Earth orbit, beyond 200 miles off the Earth?
No idea.
24. The entire history of humanity.
But what?
24 people.
So your point is
only 24.
But
so
what
I'm
Ruth's
saying
is there was a whole control centre, operations centre, backup control, all sorts of things.
Do you know what happens in the finance department of ITV?
In the finance department?
No idea. Do you know what happens? Do you know what happens in the executive office of ITV, right at the top?
No, but if somebody was covering something
they tell you nothing. Exactly.
Yeah, but if
something did happen,
but if somebody's covering something up,
Yeah.
everybody would have to cover it up.
No, they wouldn't, because you woldn't know
Sarah,
about it.
what do you think?
Well, there were also a lot of engineers, of course, working on these for years and years. They had to come into their job every morning thinking they were developing a rocket. And that's thousands of people being involved in the development and the testing in the labs, people overseeing the labs. It's not only the 24 people who actually went off the Earth. It's the whole organization of NASA and the Apollo program.
The position of the sun shadows, you will add to that today, using today's technology, you cannot see footprints, which you believe shouldn't have ever blown away.
Yep. Well, here's the smoking gun. Here's the smoking gun. We can argue all day long about, you know, what I think, we've never been to the moon. None of us have been, you know, below the surface, a certain, you know, altitude. Now, the only way we can discern whether this happened or not is by analyzing and studying the actual data that was taken during those Apollo missions, right? The scientific data.
True. That's not true.
Hold on, let me finish, right? So that's the telemetry data, right? So during those 4 years that they did the Apollo missions, they collected loads of data, you know, biometrical data, design blueprints, etc., right? To end this, if we had the data now and we could scrutinize it, if we could test it, which is the scientific method, test it, observe and research, not only has it not been released, NASA destroyed it.
Well, or lost
Why
it.
would they have destroyed
NASA
it?
Well, hang on. Donald Petit, NASA astronaut and chemical engineer. This is a direct quote from him. There's a video of him actually saying this, and I quote, "I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore."
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. The only limit to a human future is in our own imaginations.
Oh, of course, in that context, absolutely. In that context, absolutely. I completely agree with him. The technology we had at the time was so ridiculously obsolete. There was nothing we could do with it anymore. It's like if you have a car from 60 years ago that was unique, if you try to repair all the parts one by one, it's going to take you way too much money. We don't run cars that way anymore. It was scrapped eventually because it was just too outdated. So, of course, it was destroyed, the technology in that sense. We don't have it anymore. It wouldn't run.
But Sarah, we got the technology together to go there. Why haven't we been back since, is it, what, the 70s?
I think it comes down to the funding. I think after America went to the moon a few times, the people in power told the voters, why are we spending all so much money on this? Why don't we elect a party who will put our taxes to do something else? And unfortunately, it was the last time in history where so much of your taxes went to science and research and technology. It's been cut down a lot, I think, mostly for political reasons.
What do you think the moon is made of?
What I know the moon is, it's a luminary. That's all I know.
What? It shines?
It's a luminary. It's a luminary of some sort. So I can't go beyond that. And, you know, again, we're living in the age of technology. You know, you've got a P900 camera now you can buy for under £1,000.
Yeah.
And you can zoom in to the moon. That's supposed to be, by the way, 238,000 miles away in deep, dark space. And yet you can zoom in quite close in detail with a commercial camera. And people have taken photographs and images showing it sometimes translucent. You can see through it, right? Sometimes it's got something called a lunar wave. There are many videos showing the moon with a lunar wave. We don't know what that is. It's all a mystery.
So you believe you couldn't possibly land on it because it's
Absolutely
not solid?
not.
If it isn't true, is he really doing any harm, or is it just an interesting theory?
There's nothing wrong with people looking at data themselves and looking at buying their own cameras and taking their own data and so on. I think the main problem with the moon conspiracy is that the people involved that would have to cover it up now also involve people in Japan with this new satellite, people in Russia, people in Australia, who would all have to be covering up when they do this follow-up. America, why would they be covering up what America did 50 years ago?
We walked out of the room and President Nixon said, I've decided to do that and I need you to do this job. We're going to do it. It was just amazing. So we were trying to figure out who would do what when. He simply has got to have the person he wants in that job. And it has to be someone who's capable of doing it. And it has to be somebody he knows well.
Donald Rumsfeld was the first to propose Stanley Kubrick. The film would have to be perfect, but the set could never be built in time. The filming of 2001: A Space Odyssey was drawing to a close in a suburb of London. Why not use the sets there? During the Kennedy administration, the White House had granted him special authorization to access strategic areas of the Pentagon during the preparations for the film Dr. Strangelove. Kubrick owed them. I told Mr. Nixon it's very dangerous to lie in the United States. You can't pull a con like that in a democracy. Too many people would talk. It would be absurd. But he said, almost sadly, go ahead anyway. Rumsfeld offered to go and negotiate personally with Stanley Kubrick. He and Henry Kissinger flew to England that same evening. Kubrick was surprised and amused by the idea, but began by refusing. Rumsfeld wouldn't give up. In the end, Kubrick agreed. The fake footage would be shot in England in the MGM studios near Boreham Wood with a skeleton crew. The 2 technicians and 2 actors would be CIA agents. They would sign a contract committing themselves to perpetual silence about the whole affair. Once the filming was over, they would have to disappear. But Stanley Kubrick was a perfectionist. Faced with the CIA crew's lack of professionalism, he ended up, against his better judgment, supervising the shooting of the fake moonwalk.
I'm LBJ. Boo! The end of the decade is here, and there's still no Americans on the moon. Those Ruskies are gonna beat us to it.
I'll help you, Mr. President.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Stanley Kubrick, and I'll use some tricks I learned while filming the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, to fake a moon landing.
And we're the Mafia, and we'll fund your scam to build a secret soundstage in Las Vegas.
Good. While people think they're in space, we'll keep the astronauts busy with whores and gambling. Then we'll pay them off, or brainwash them, or kill them. The end.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap. So, I guess you want to do it again. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Morrissey.
All the theories about the movie The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, and my theory, of course, is #1 featured in it, and I was reluctant when I first did it because I thought they were going to treat me shabbily, and they didn't. And the critics, however, have not treated me too well. But what's interesting about it is that not only is it playing in theaters all over the country right now, but and not only is it a decent film, although
room 237.
Yeah, room 237.
Okay. Yeah.
There's everyone has a different theory about The Shining.
Yeah.
I think my theory combines all the other theories except for what I consider to be the most ridiculous theory in the movie, which is the theory that The Shining was about the Holocaust. I mean, I fell off my chair laughing so hard when I read that one. I thought the moon landing theory at least has evidence behind it. So it's been an interesting experience and very useful for the whole getting out the truth about Stanley Kubrick, so I appreciate it. And what's interesting about it is that Stanley Kubrick's assistant, Leon Vitale, who was with him for the last 28 years of his life.
He knows.
He had an article, an interview in the New York Times, I believe it was not last Sunday, the Sunday before, in which I was mentioned among the theories, and he virulently denied every one of the theories except for one, which he decided not to mention hardly at all, which happened to be my theory.
Very good.
And, and you can tell more by what people don't say than what they say. Every single thing that should happen on the set, we just let someone bring a sweater up on the set that day and put it on the kid.
Room 237. In the book, The Shining, the room number is 217, but for the film, Kubrick changed it to 237. Here's the true reason why. The moon, the natural satellite of Earth, visible by reflection of sunlight, and traveling around Earth in a slightly elliptical orbit at an average distance of about 381,600 kilometers. 381,600 kilometers converted to miles is 237,000. Room 237 represents the moon. Danny enters room 237, the moon room. This is where Stanley Kubrick films the Apollo 11 moon landing.
We're talking about Apollo, and let's not even talk about whether or not we went there. Let's just talk about the Cold War and the fact that we had to go there. We had to succeed. We couldn't take a chance on not succeeding. A tremendous black eye. So to guarantee success, what's the obvious thing to do? You recreate it. You stage it. So you've got it to release in case something goes wrong. And then they got to the point, obviously, where they said, well, why take a chance at all? Let's just go with what we've got in the can. That's my guess, anyhow.
Yeah, and, you know, the more that you examine it, the more actually ludicrous the whole thing gets, to the point where it's almost a comedy.
So I keep digging a little bit deeper, and I finally get underneath this cloud cover here, and a few images pop up. And I say, oh, images, what are they? Well, this is what you got, which I'm sure that looks familiar to you, right? Looks just like the pictures they give us of Mars. So I'm just kind of creeping around here and definitely noticing the same kind of undulation changes and same kind of rock, same kind of dirt. Only thing that's missing is that nice little red tint that they pay somebody $150,000 a year to put on there. So I said, I wonder what they're doing out here. What is all this equipment for? I'm sure it can't be NASA, right? Whose orange Hummer is this? Okay, that looks like a NASA symbol. Cameras set up, tents, ATVs, food. They've been there a while. It's not a one-day trip. Got their antennas set up out in the middle of nowhere in Greenland. Zoom in, what's that? Oh, nothing. Just looked like it was funny. So I'll keep kind of going through here and see if it... What the... Yeah, so... I think I found out where Mars is, guys. It's just about 1,000 miles north of me.
He was playing with the water, with the paddles, the hydro repellent paddles. So he was bouncing the glob of water between the two paddles, and one of the community noticed that his eyes were not following the frickin' water.
But when those guys were playing ping pong back and forth with the water, you'll notice that the girl always is looking above the camera, and the reason why is because they're looking at the CGI feed. You know, they need to see where the item is that they're playing ping pong with because it's not right in front of them. So once I saw Helmick's video, I really, it opened my eyes even more to, okay, because every time I've watched those astronauts, they appear to be watching a monitor above the camera, which, okay, I could see doing that. But on the other hand, if you're just up in space giving an interview or playing ping pong or whatever you're doing, then you would have no reason to look at a monitor. It doesn't matter. The camera's on you, you know that, so it doesn't matter what you look like. You shouldn't care about that, but they're always very concerned with that monitor.
This one says Drill Hill. All right. Just go in here. Totally looks like the Mars terrain to me. Oh yeah, it says NASA. What's that say? Mars Project? This thing's just driving around taking pictures.
Here's another scene with Catherine Katie Coleman. Seems to be done in the suspended mode. Have a look at her hair. There's something odd about her hair. I know this is zero gravity and hair is supposed to stick out and go all over the place, but her hair doesn't really flop around naturally. It's always sticking out kind of rigidly. Maybe they permed it in that position, or perhaps they're hanging her upside down. As she shakes her head from side to side slightly, you can see the hair always springs back to a particular position with respect to her head.
Here's iJustine. She has a vlog of her hair flows in the air, as it would, because the hair is moving through air.
In this scene, Chris Hadfield bends down in order to adjust something, and you can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness in order to support it. Of course, they've computer graphicked out the supporting wires.
It's a Chinese spacewalk. A bubble rises in the pool. It's complete fraud. Here, the helmet gets hit on the International Space Station, and a bubble rises into the pool. And it takes an odd trajectory because it's in a water pool. Houston, we have a problem. Space is broken. Sorry, U.S. government. I have to show them the bubble. There's the bubble in the pool that we just saw. Yep, doesn't even go in a straight line.
The whole video is about a minute long. I said 45 seconds before was the maximum for full motion mode. It may be more like a minute that they can do this full motion zero gravity mode. Anyway, have a look at the end of this, and there's a strange motion to the Santa. Take a look at the way it moves. It kind of skips out of her control a couple of times. First it dips down and then up a little bit, and then at the end it goes up a little bit, and she kind of looks a bit embarrassed, like she's been caught putting her hands in the cookie jar. Oops, I hope you didn't see that. No, we didn't see, Katie. Just keep the beautiful smile on your face, and that'll distract us from the hoax.
So, in this clip, they're talking, live feed, and we have a astronaut go by us in the background, obviously trying to give it a more realistic, spacey, station busy effect. And so we see the guy come flying along in a harness on his wires. Pretty amazing.
At the time of the Apollo 11 mission, Buzz Aldrin was a 32-degree Freemason. They were in good company, as many of NASA's astronauts were also Freemasons.
One of the ways we promote ourselves among Masons, a reason to join, is we consider ourselves the University of Freemasonry. And the real emphasis in the Scottish Rite is on receiving more light, learning more about the history of our world.
We always indulge in a few pagan rites to appease the EVA gods. These little ceremonies are very, very important to ensure mission success if you do them right.
Another aspect of the illusion of space travel is spacewalks. These are faked inside a swimming pool. It's a custom-built swimming pool, and that's a great way to fake zero gravity. A gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened. There shouldn't be water leaking into someone's helmet and a person almost drowning in space. How can you drown in space? They now wear snorkels to make sure that they don't drown in space. How can this be happening? A snorkel in space? Which is the faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. Scuba tanks in space? Snorkels and scuba tanks in space?
And then they also pretend that it travels in all the same trajectory, and this thing just scoops everything up. And then it has a claw that can grab big pieces of space debris, and then little pieces of space debris get caught on the sides by panels. Of course, there's no in-between. Do they catch the middle-sized pieces of space debris with the box? And then Debris Drone 1 does not send the package down to Earth to get incinerated. No, the whole thing goes down to Earth to become incinerated, and it's fucking useless. So because they say there's over 500,000 pieces of space debris, they have to send thousands of space debris drone 1s. But the important thing about this is the camera. They show you a camera on this satellite drone. So somebody is operating that claw and they're getting this space junk. Why can't you see the video from this camera? This thing has a camera. Wouldn't you like to see this thing in operation?
How do you brainwash? Well, you repeat it. You repeat the same thing over and over again. You know, if somebody's resisting the concept, if you keep fucking repeating it, after 6 times, they'll incorporate it in their brain. They may not agree with it, but repeat it another 1,000 times, they'll start saying it. Here's like a perfect example of them landing on the moon. I mean, it's proof right there. This is an official NASA photo of the first Apollo 11 lunar module landing on the moon. I mean, it's right there. This is proof, man. It's the picture's right there. It's landing on the moon. But the only problem I have with this picture is that it's taken from the moon. I don't know what the big deal was with being the first guy on the moon. It seems the camera crew was already there.
A warning about a cult of pedophiles.
He was trying to warn.
Yes. It starts with Lolita.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it goes all the way through to Eyes Wide Shut. It's constantly trying to warn us that there's a cult of people trying to take our children.
It's the cult, and it's here.
It is the cult.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're at work, and they're not going to stop. They're relentless.
Oh, no.
From there, that point of view I've never seen. And it's funny when you click on Google Images, photo of the Earth, keep going. Because this is realistic. But you'll see 40 pages on Google. But it's always the same fucking photo. It's the same photo. Boom, 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 40 pages. Look closely. I guess this is a photo of the Hubble telescope taking a picture of itself. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's an authentic photo of the Hubble telescope out there doing its job. Isn't that amazing how they could take a photo of the thing taking photos? A moon they discovered off of Mars. It was Opipapa, and if you do a close-up on it, you see all the craters and the texture of the moon on my shirt. There it is. It's just that. It's just a bunch of paint. Next image. And they actually came up with a new term for it. It's a collisionary supernova. Unbelievable that they actually caught this. If you get a zoom in on this, there's a zoom in that Hubble did on this. These are actual fucking suns being formed. Unbelievable. Look at this. On a Christmas tree.
Yeah, and this all results from, the early 50s when they studied in the MK Ultra programs. And they were studying how to influence people and how to get them to do what they want you to do. And, and that's when it began. It began with, in the early 50s and reached the turning point in the 90s. And now we're in this place where they're going to start enacting the most absurd things. And we're not going to be able to stop them. And for sure they're going to come and take the guns. And to me, it looks like a fait accompli. It's coming. It may not be next year, but it's coming.
And she's kind of famous now when it comes to NASA. This 13-year-old wants to be the first person to live on Mars. Never mind the fact that it's incredibly ridiculous to believe that they would be sending people to Mars. If people love science, they would figure that out. They would look into what it would mean to go to Mars. Like, what would it take? What would it be like traveling to Mars? But then you got articles from SpaceX talking about they could send people to Jupiter's moon. So naturally, nobody uses their brain. They think all of this is just a road trip. It's not a big deal.
Oh, this is amazing. We just went to Mars. Hey, big round of applause now for the Americans going to Mars. And this is the official image of them landing there. It's fucking funny. It's like, isn't it amazing how they were landing there and they already had an airbrush artist with his easel set up to paint it land that quick. That's proof. They were there, man. They're landing on the sand. Check it out. That's it. There you go. Some more images. This is what they're doing on Mars right now. Moving around with their little rover. That's a real photo. Look at that. This is another. I swear to God, they're on Mars right now. Look at that. This thing's moving around. I don't even know what it does. It's like a weird sort of sample collector. It's a spider. It's a spider sampler. It's a spider sampler. Sand sampler. It's a sand sampler, they call it.
It's getting spice.
It's getting spices from Mars.